Hello, everybody. My name is Kaiser'sLore, and I'm the crazy man going to tell you about Agent Sonya. Okay, let's go. So, this is probably not going to be the video that gets uploaded to YouTube. I made a promise with myself that by the end of the month I would create a video. I just double checked all of the information. It all seems to be correct. And this is sort of the fuck it, we ball. Let's just upload a video, see if everything works. And next month, I plan to upload everything more officially. There was a lot of things that got cut out of this. A lot of the culture I had to research had to get cut out. A lot of the nuances got cut out. I was working on uploading a bunch of maps, but if you've ever had to upload pictures from a book online, it can be a very arduous process. Some of the pictures weren't very good, so I had to go through with Microsoft Paint. And yeah, so this is just a fuck it, we ball. So slide 1, Jewish espionage. Wait, see, add notes or scripts to help you. How do I get rid of that? There you go. So, who was Agent Sonya? Ursula Kaczynski. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the middle name. Born in 1907, lived to 2000, was raised in a progressive Jewish family, and later became active in espionage for the Soviet army. She moved to China in 1930 to help spread communism. She also did intelligent work in Poland, Switzerland, as well as New York and America for a brief amount of time. So, Agent Sonya got involved in communism very young, saying to her father, who asked her to wait before getting politically active because she was still young, if 17-year-olds are old enough to work and be exploited, then they are also old enough to fight against that exploitation. And that is exactly why I've become a communist. Who was Agent Sonya? Agent Sonya is one of the most accomplished spies known. The reason I say known is I'm assuming there are spies who are more successful than her, but we don't know of them. That's kind of part of the job of being a spy. So that's what's so remarkable about this story is not only, how do we get rid of that? Not only do we know about Agent Sonya, but what we do know about her is rather impressive. She was one of the greatest assets to the communist world, even being promoted to colonel of the Red Army in Russia. Okay, there we go. I think I figured out how to get rid of that circle. That circle was apparently the camera, and I'm not going to record myself. So here's a little meme of John Wick. That's his name. It's like, no, that's not what real spies are like. And then there's a little clip of, it's like Agent Sonya. Yeah, that's what real spies are like. Okay, how do I get this computer? No, computer, obey me. Do as I tell you to do. No, how do I? Computer, how do I? No, that's an son of a. I will murder your firstborn child. How do I? Yeah, yeah. How do I go to the next slide? I'm going to the next slide. Go. Oh, say, can you see what the fuck is happening? Yes. Okay, that didn't work. I'm not sure why I thought that would work. I just went to the next slide. Hmm. Oh, I don't. Should be able to just go to the next slide. Okay. Okay, I think it's working now. So, overview Agent Sonya's contribution to the communist cause. So, first, we're going to talk about Shanghai, China, the city of many names. So, the etymology of Shanghai is upon sea, together meaning on the sea, according to Wikipedia. But according to my professor of the history of East Asia, Shanghai doesn't mean on the sea. What it actually means is to put on, what is it? Actually, did I include that in the slides? I included it in my exterior notes. To put on the river? To put on the sea, that's right. That should be what I put in my notes. Yeah, to put on the water. Put on the sea. Gonna have to double check the etymology of that. But according to my professor, the etymology of that is to put on the ocean. Put on the ocean. Also, Shanghai colloquially goes, well, during the 1930s-ish, it also colloquially went by two different names, the Paris of the East and the Whore of the Orient. Shanghai-born British author J.G. Ballard described it as a place where anything could be bought or sold. Shanghai was one of the first Chinese ports to be open to Western trade and has long dominated national commerce. Since communist victory in 1949, however, it's become an industrial giant whose products supply Chinese growing domestic and foreign market. Same professor. Shanghai in 1920 had a good claim to be the most socially diverse city on earth, a place where the distance between rich and poor was not so much a gap as a yawning gulf. Part colony, part Chinese city, it was home to 50,000 foreigners, surrounded by almost 3 million Chinese, most living in abject squalor. The international community included British, American, French, German, Portuguese, Indian, White Russian. White Russian doesn't mean white people who are Russian. It means people who are not communists who are Russian, communists who, non-communists who fled Russia. Japanese and others, some of them penniless refugees, others new minted, I always hate this word, rich people of staggering wealth. So we're going to go on to Agent Sonya's family life. And this is where my brain starts hurting really, really bad because it's so complicated. I mean, I've been freaking building charts and rereading, and oh my God, I hate this. So, to the best of my knowledge, Ursula Kaczynski's first husband was Rudy Hamburger. Real name of Rudy Hamburger was Rudolf Hamburger, father of Michael Hamburger, the first child out of the three of Ursula Kaczynski's. Michael Hamburger played a critical role in revealing. So Michael Hamburger is the child of Rudolf Hamburger. Michael Hamburger played a critical role in revealing the true story of Agent Sonya. He died in January 2020, but in his lifetime, he spoke with Ben Macintyer. Ben Macintyer is the author of the book that most of my research came from, The Spy Next Door, Agent Sonya, The Spy Next Door, which is a New York Times bestselling author, who is a New York Times bestselling author. Here is a photo of Rudolf Hamburger around the time he would have met Ursula, who is Agent Sonya. Richard Storge, they had a fling, I think. This is where things get really complicated. Originally, I thought he was one of the three men who impregnated her. I don't believe that is true. Land Fleming once described him as the most formidable spy in history. He was a womanizer. He's probably the most close to a James Bond kind of person that I'm familiar with in real life. He was very disciplined in his professional life, but his personal life was a mess. Had many encounters with many women. His cover during the time that he was in China was an expert on Chinese agriculture. He also married a name I can't pronounce, a woman he met in China and brought back to Russia with him. Second husband, Joan Patera. They had a child named Jenny, nicknamed Nene. I'm really bad with names. Again, this is just a rough draft video in which I'm just trying to figure out how to work this technology. Third husband, Len Bertrand. In 1940s, Len and Agent Sonya lived together in England in a small cottage with their 3 children. I'm putting that in parentheses, only one of which Len was the father, and that was Peter. Actually, if you ever do buy the book, or rent it from a library, highly recommend reading the book Agent Sonya. On the back, they actually speak mostly of the story that happens in England I'm just going to read off the back. In 1942, in a quaint village in the leafy English Cotswolds, a thin, elegant woman lived in a small cottage with her 3 children and her husband, who worked as a machinist nearby. By all accounts, Ursula Bertrand seemed to lead a simple, unassuming life, but behind the facade, again, I'm still learning these stupid-ass words, was that she was a high-ranked Soviet intellectual officer and a veteran agent gathering scientific secrets that would enable the Soviet Union to build the atomic bomb. This true-life spy story is a masterpiece about the woman codenamed Sonya. Over the course of her career, she was hunted by the Chinese government, the Japanese secret police, the Nazis, MI5, MI6, and the FBI. So now we go on to who I just want to call the Angry Nanny, Ola. So her real name was Uga Muth. It's on screen. Speak this. I think this is German. I don't speak German. So basically what happened was the nanny really fell in love with the children, particularly, I believe, I'm actually not going to say which child I believe they fell in love with the most because I don't want to get that wrong. She fell in love with a child and basically said, well, I'm going to take the child because you're a spy, and if they find out you're a spy, you're going to put the child in danger, and I care about the child. So there was a time period in which there was basically a Cold War between Ursula Kaczynski, Agent Sonya, and her nanny. So assimilation versus resistance. So this slide was originally because at one point, many iterations ago, I presented this for a class of mine. I got a C on it. I personally feel like I should have got higher. But then again, it was incredibly unfinished, and as you can tell, it is still very unfinished. In which it was about, in which the class I was presenting this in was on Jewish experiences. And I was making the argument that this story explains Jewish experiences pretty well during this time period. And in general, one of the common things we talked about in that class was assimilation versus resistance, in which oftentimes the Jewish community is asked to give up part of their identity for protection. There's a lot of history into this, and I hope to try to present on that later. So for assimilation, I said Ursula Kaczynski was born into a secular Jewish family in Berlin, but as she became a spy, she had to assimilate in other cultures in order to survive. If she were found out she was Jewish, a spy, or a communist, she would be killed. And who knows what would have happened to her children. Thankfully, her children were not killed for any political reasons. One of the things that I found really interesting as I was researching this, I'm actually going to get up and grab some books. There you go. Because there's actually quite a lot of highly educated intellectual Jews who became very interested in communism during this time. Another prominent example of this is Robert Oppenheimer, actually, which is something that they didn't talk about much in the movie Oppenheimer, understandably it's a very complicated and very controversial issue. My theory as to why a lot of educated intellectual Jews were drawn to communism at the time was because of the fact that at the time you were either seen as a communist or a fascist. And the fascists were killing the Jews. So, it makes sense you would go that way. And for resistance, I put down Kaczynski. Later life illustrates a powerful form of resistance. Her involvement in espionage for the Soviet Union was fueled by her communist belief and his desire to oppose fascism, which posed a direct threat to the Jewish community. Kaczynski believed that communism was a cause that resisted totalitarian regimes, like Hitler's Germany. Moreover, her identity as a Jewish communist activist highlighted a dual resistance. I don't really agree with this part. I mean, I agree with it, but I feel like I could have worded it better, both against anti-Semitism and the oppressive political climate of our time. Kaczynski's actions can be seen as an act of defiance against the yeah, that one's a bit gibberish. So here's actually a photo. I was originally going to play the video, but then for copyright issues, I don't think I'm going to play the video, so I'm just going to use it as a photo. But this is actually a photo of Ursula Kaczynski later in life admitting to a lot of the things that she did, which is just fascinating. I might link this in the description. Like and subscribe, or you will lose your Third Amendment. Please understand that I'm a 20-year-old between jobs and not a professional, and understand that I may have made some mistakes. Thank you.